to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by energy and environment reporter Jeremy Beaman. Jeremy, talked about, we had the OPEC Plus production cut, obviously a lot of back and forth between the United States and Saudi Arabia. What do we know now that we didn't know then, or are there things that we still really don't know?
Well, we know now, based on some reporting by various newspapers and sort of admissions from the Biden administration and from the Saudis, that they had been talking before OPEC Plus made this decision more than a week ago to cut production. They had been talking behind the scenes, about this matter, and the Biden administration was urging them to put it off. And in fact, John Kirby in the White House said that they were telling the Saudis there was basically no market basis for going forward with this production cut. And of course, the Saudis and OPEC more broadly concluded that there was, that because of the way the oil market is being so volatile right now, and prices are fluctuating so much, that they decided to move forward with this cut. And so we've seen this fissure, which kind of healed after OPEC had continued increasing production, but now they've reversed course. So there's acrimony there again. The White House is evaluating their relationship with OPEC and the Saudis, they said. And so we're going to see this cut come in November. And the oil market's still fluctuating, frankly, even as we speak. And this is something that continues to hang over the Biden administration: gas prices, oil prices, and they're not getting any help from OPEC right now.
So their Facebook status is now, it's complicated. That's how they describe their relationship.
Is that an option?
I think it is an option. I don't know. I'll have to research that.
Okay.
So you were talking, though, about, so clearly this fissure has happened, but there's one important event that happened in the past and one important event that happened in the future that kind of color this a little bit. One, over the summer, President Biden went to Saudi Arabia, met with the Saudi leaders, said he wasn't going hat in hand for oil purposes. Now their posture towards some of that raises questions about that. And then, of course, there's an important event in the future, which is the midterm elections, which a lot of people are viewing this through the prism of that. It's
impossible not to, because when you look back last year, basically a year ago, as we sit here, last October, gas is when oil prices, reached sort of their most recent, the first of the peaks that they would reach, in the ensuing year. Then the war would come in February and things would really take off. But it's a year ago this month that oil prices really started taking off. And Biden at the time, basically the first thing he did publicly was turn to Saudi Arabia and say, they're the swing producer. They're the ones who can bring us more barrels when we need more oil. So he kind of set the administration on this course in some ways, and that's why we're looking through it as this decision, this cut, through that prism, because Biden had leaned on OPEC so much, and there's a reason for that. Look, OPEC is responsible for something like a quarter of daily oil production, 20 million barrels or something, 2022 or something like that. So there are reasons we're looking through that prism.
So there is a potentially, at least arguably, more positive energy development that's part of the Democrats' climate bill. It's a very surprising one. Talk a little bit about that.
Depends on which Democrats you ask. This development. So we talked about this before. How the Inflation Reduction Act, the Democrats' signature bill, had all these reconciliation bill had all these clean energy, green energy provisions, tax credits, grants, and things like that, to shift the economy, the U.S. economy, away from fossil fuels and toward green energy. Well, as we talked about, Joe Manchin was able to sneak some oil and gas leasing provisions in there to basically secure and ensure that there would be more leasing going forward. Since Biden took office, it's been very on and off. There have only been one offshore lease sale since Biden took office, and there's only been one series of onshore lease sales we're talking about on federal lands and in federal waters. Well, the IRA, this climate bill, has resurrected oil and gas leasing because of the provisions that have been put in. Since the law passed, the Interior Department has reinstated that one lease sale. It had been thrown out, the offshore lease sale. They've moved forward on several other offshore lease sales and onshore lease sales going forward. This is something. The leasing program had been also subject of court battles, and so it's kind of provided the oil and gas industry a measure of certainty that they haven't had so far. And again, it was provided in this vehicle, this climate bill vehicle, as an asterisk.
Right, which it was the successor to Build Back Better. It has symbolized a lot of liberal ambitions on Capitol Hill and in the White House. And for Republicans, it's symbolized big spending and big government. But you would think that this might be a development that a lot of Republicans would be happy about.
Certainly. I mean, I think probably if you talk to them privately, they would say that. But overall,
a lot of other provisions in the bill that they're not going to like.
Right, and even some other the green energy provisions that they probably would have supported, in another context. It's interesting how the battle lines ended up, because for very small sort of contingent of green environmental groups that I sort of follow along to, there was a small amount that said those leasing provisions spoiled the whole bill. Manchin spoiled it all. But in the end, most everyone and the entire party really in Congress, Democratic Party, got behind this bill because of what it was able to accomplish toward the green energy transition, even though it had those distasteful oil and gas leasing provisions in them.
Right. What impact, if any, I mean, because these things do take time to really work their way through the markets, but is there anything that this would do for gas prices?
Over time, most actions taken now, especially when they deal with leasing or permitting even, will take years to develop. And a large part of the reason that the economy is in this position, that gas prices are so high, is because of the way COVID affected gasoline demand. Plummeted. So companies that operated refineries, many of them closed. Also, there's a situation where a lot of these refiners have shifted their refineries in recent years to make renewable diesel and other biofuels, and so they don't refine oil anymore to make gasoline and other refined products. So when demand sort of roared back, a leading factor in rising prices was we didn't have enough refining capacity to meet demand. When gas prices, this was a big subject during the summer. The White House hosted refiners, and this was sort of in the news cycle for a while. When gas prices started falling, fell out of the news cycle again, but now that the White House is again battling refiners and apparently floating this idea of restricting petroleum exports, people are starting to realize again this is a fundamental problem in the energy market, the U.S. energy market, and the global too. I mean, something like 3 million barrels per day of refining capacity has been taken offline, in the last 2 years or so, and that's substantial.
I mean, the White House though has been pretty eager to take credit when gas prices go down, and then tend to point to these very valid external factors when they go back up.
Yeah, that's politics, isn't it? Certainly, especially with, like, for example, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. The administration really made that the centerpiece of their sort of gas price strategy, and they've attributed a lot of the fall in prices to that, and there's evidence that it did help. More oil on the market is going to help bring down prices.
Sure.
But yeah, like you said, a lot of these problems are sort of fundamental, years in the making, and for that reason, they're years in the making to solve. And all of the refiners who have spoken publicly about this, their industry groups are saying, we're not going to solve this right now. It's just not going to happen.
So you're saying the leasing revival won't necessarily give Democrats a new lease on life?
Perhaps not.
Perhaps not. Thank you, Jeremy. You can read Jeremy and subscribe to our Daily on Energy newsletter at washingtonexaminer.com.